So if you've been editing photos in Adobe Lightroom for a while, you might be wondering what the go is with those Adobe profiles in the develop panel. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what these profiles do, how they're different from the in-camera profiles, the picture profiles you use when you're shooting photos, and which one you should actually use for your photography. So you have the option in almost every camera now. In fact, even iPhones can do this now, to choose between RAW and JPEG. JPEG being a highly compressed version of an image and RAW being mostly uncompressed. Think of it like a clay sculpture. The JPEG would be the one that's already dry, it's set, it's already got its shape, and trying to change that shape will often result in it breaking. Whereas RAW is like having a sculpture that's still made of wet clay. You can still mold it and continue to change its shape. Now, the picture profile that you use is, in the case of the RAW file, just the way you visually represent that photo. For JPEG, it absolutely does matter because this is your sculpture. This is what it's going to look like, and changing the way that that photo looks is going to be more difficult. For RAW, later down the track, you can change things like the white balance and the tint, exposure, contrast in a really non-destructive way. And for this reason, I actually only shoot RAW. But in order to actually see a real-time image on the camera, maybe you're showing your client the photos that you've taken so far throughout a photo shoot, you're going to have to choose a picture profile. And for this, I'm always going to choose a profile that best represents what the photo is going to look like once I've edited it in Lightroom. So now you probably will be wondering, if I shoot the camera standard profile in my camera and then I import it into Lightroom, why does the photo look completely different from the in-camera preview? And that is because by default, Lightroom is going to select the Adobe color profile. And unless you choose that camera matched profile in Lightroom, it's going to look completely different. So why doesn't Adobe just give you that camera matched profile when you start editing? Well, actually, if you wanted to, you could change this in the settings in Lightroom. Just simply choose the camera standard or landscape, portrait, whatever profile you're using in your camera as the default in the settings. So what is even the point of the Adobe color profile? Well, the color profiles built into Lightroom are actually smarter than you think. Camera companies don't talk to each other and compare color profiles. They just interpret the color from the sensor in the way that they think looks best. Now imagine that you're working with another photographer on a job. Let's say you're shooting a wedding together. You use a Fuji camera, they use a Canon camera. Now, if you use the in-camera profiles when you're in the editing process, and let's say you've both taken, 1,500 photos each, so 3,000 total, you're gonna have to go through and color match every single photo between those two cameras. But if you use the Adobe color profiles as a base in Lightroom, they're going to look almost identical. And I actually didn't know this until a couple of years into my photography editing journey. And it's why I use Adobe Color whenever I create a preset, because it means that if, let's say for example, one of my friends or one of you guys wanted to use my presets, linked in the description by the way, it wouldn't matter what camera you're using, as long as Adobe has created a base profile for that camera, it's going to look very, very similar. Of course, there are tiny minor differences between camera manufacturers, even with that Adobe color profile. And if you were to ask me to pick between two photos taken on two different cameras with the same Adobe profile, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you which one was which. So to prove this, I took RAW photos of the same scene with 4 different camera brands. We've got Canon, Fuji, Sony, and Ricoh. And these are how the photos look with the standard profiles, the ones that you select in the camera applied. And then here are those same 4 photos with the Adobe color profiles. But I think one of the biggest things you'll notice with the comparison between standard and the Adobe color is the Adobe color photos are quite muted. There's not as much saturation and contrast, and they just really don't pop. And that's where I found this little hack. You can use the calibration, the panel right down the bottom of the develop module, to create a preset that's still based on Adobe Color that has a little more oomph and character to the colors. So just by increasing the saturation of the red, blue, and green channels, you can add a lot of that vibrancy back into your photo and get very close to the standard look, if you like the standard look of your camera profile, while still being able to apply this, if you save it as a preset, to whatever other camera brand and get a really nice base profile. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that clears up the whole Adobe profile and why it's the default in Lightroom and why you shouldn't ignore its strengths. Obviously, do what's right for you. If you love the way that in-camera profiles capture and display those colors, then set that as your default. Or if you're like me and you want to have the option to match different camera brands, create your own preset using that calibration tab. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Appreciate you guys for sticking around once again. See you in the next video.